And what's funny is that y'all are going to game this whole thing, and you continue to game it, which is and it's fun to watch the gaming. And so some of you will be like, if I really want to get my question answered, Paul just wrote, no more questions this week. So someone's going to write right now at it's 11:07 at 11:08 their new question for next month. Well, maybe Paul will give up on Bridges of Meaning. Yes, sir. 9-digit Eric got in. And part of the reason I do all these Randos conversations is so that you can colonize me and that you don't possess me. Because what I find, and T Grog is a great example of this. T Grog as the troll in the comments section was a little bit more unruly for me, and it triggered some things in me. And I watched myself getting triggered. But then once I knew T Grog a little bit in the live streams, I knew a little bit of his story. Oh, okay. Now he's not so triggering. Now he's much more friendly. Now I think we can actually have a much more fulfilling conversation, because here's the funny thing about time. In many ways, this little corner and my YouTube project has been about YouTube slow. What do I mean by that? The game of climbing up the YouTube hierarchy is get bigger and bigger names in and have non-randos conversations to climb up the status hierarchy of YouTube. And, I've got no problem with Chris Williamson or Justin Brierley, because they know, and anybody who has a YouTube account knows, if you can get a big name on your channel, you'll get a bump. And so I've got many requests for conversations from me for your channel. Part of it is you just want to talk to me. Part of it is you want my attention. Part of it is you have a sense that maybe we can play together and that'll be fun. So there's a lot of different things going on there. But we're doing YouTube slow. I'm not overly concerned about how fast this grows. In fact, I'm more concerned if it grows too fast. I like the fact that part of me likes the fact that when I post a Randos conversation, some of them still get less than 1,000 views. And some who look into those 1,000 views find gold. So there's a little opponent processing going on with respect to that. But the fun thing about this is building a relationship with you guys. CW and his fascination with Dutch Calvinist theology. I just find that adorable. I love it. And T Grog and this thorn in his paw. That thorn's going to come out, T Grog. It's going to come out. I'm sorry. You're too nice of a guy. You're fighting it so hard. This little corner is going to exercise you of that, and you're going to be another rando who is, and that's why everybody, when you come in, everybody just smiles and says, "Come on in." It's just sort of like an AA meeting when an alcoholic comes stumbling in and says, "Y'all are full of shit," and everybody just laughs. That's what I used to say, and now I'm one of them. So we'll see what happens, because it happens differently for everyone. But we're doing relationships slow, and it means that my name will always be smaller than Jordan Peterson's. But boy, am I going to enjoy these relationships. That's what it's about.
What I'm curious about T Grog, and this is what I would want to talk about if I had the opportunity to talk to T Grog. It's really the instinct of interest. Like, where does that instinct come from? Not even where that instinct comes from. It's more like, why does he think that instinct for interest has led him here into this space, into the corner? And why does he trust it? Like, why trust if most of it's woo, let's say, like, why trust that instinct? And he would say, because we're nice people and we're smart people, probably. It's probably what he'd say. It's like, sure, but there's a lot of spaces of nice, smart people. Like, there's a lot of spaces in any other, and you could say even in philosophy, like there's podcasts, there's way more experts out there. The experts, there's way more experts out there that um that he could listen to. And instead he's listening to Grail Country, which is 2,000 subscribers. Like, there's so many experts that are nice people, who are wise people, that he could listen to, and yet he's still listening to Grail Country. Like, why? Like, I think, and I'm figuring this out as I'm saying it. I think it's a yearning for fellowship, I suspect. Like, I have that yearning. Like, seriously, like, that's why I want to make friends with you, and I want to make friends with McMo. It's like, I don't have anybody to talk to. Now, when I was in my darkness, let's say, like, I was figuring out this stuff for myself, like what I believed in, why, and I was figuring that out over years by journaling to myself. And but like, you get to a point where, let's say, most of the bile, like all my resentment was out, and I'm like, there's still something. And it's the same thing with faith, like faith in my local church. It's like, I want to ask Alan this too, because I'm going to talk. Yeah, see, I'm talking too much. I just drive Chad right away. But I'm going to ask Alan this, which is like, we have our local churches, we have our local lives, and yet we're still pulled into this space. And for me, it's fellowship, it's relationships, it's connections. It's like, man, like things that it's like the things that you if you were lucky, you had someone in your college life who you could speculate till 4 a.m. like one night out of like 6 months, where you had a really good night, where you just, things clicked, and you could speculate and just go for like 5 hours talking to someone. Like, that happens every day in this space, where we could just explore anything. I mean, and it's not anything really. There are, but like, oh, man, like what we have is so remarkable. Like, this doesn't happen anymore. You ever hear the Gartner hype cycle? You ever seen that?
No.
So folks out there can look it up. But I find that this is the case, like every new thing in my life. So there's an initial, and you could think of this as like the stock market bubble for the .com obsession in around 2000. There's this initial wave. It's called the peak of inflated expectations. Any new thing, and this applies individually, and then the Gartner hype cycle is intended to apply to broad things, like the hype of a new product or a company or something like that.
Of course,
I think it's completely applicable at an individual level, because you start a new thing, right? I start on Chad's channel, but more importantly, I have a new friend in Chad. I'm like, yeah, things are awesome, and then Chad really ticks me off. That hasn't happened yet. It will happen. It will. That's really the true test of a friendship, is you have your first argument and away you go. But anyway, so the top of the cycle, top of the wave, and then, so this was around 2000, year 2000, Amazon, Priceline, all these companies worth crazy amounts of money. Tulip Mania, and then
Tulip Mania, exactly.
And Tulip Mania, same thing. And then and then you go into the trough of disillusionment, is what it's called.
Oh, interesting.
Great Depression. And then you slowly kind of come out of it in the hype cycle. But the more I found that I'm able to identify where I am in that cycle in various aspects of my life, then I know, like, oh, in Bible study that, let's say, I'm doing, if I'm like in the trough, it's like, no, this is normal. Like, I just need to keep going. And that's the routine, right? That's the daily practice that Chad's always talking about. It's like, the daily practice, or like the weekly mass, or whatever it is, the whole point of that is so that when the trough of disillusionment happens, which inevitably it happens, that we have a plan to get out of it, whatever it is.
Yeah, right. And so you'll find, with poems, is that we have a ton of lyrics of lament, and we have a ton of lyrics of anticipation, but we have like a really like small sliver of lyrics of consummation. And I just think that's interesting, just from a human psyche standpoint, because it's really hard to be in the present, right? And it's really hard to capture the feeling of a flow state, yet we all understand what a flow state is, right? And so I think poetry can teach us that,
that being able to kind of recognize, the mood or whatnot. And so to your point, um, I didn't know I thought this about the parable until you poked me here a little bit.
I have colonized the
Yeah,
kale.
it worked, but it really is reframed it for me. Because I just got finished teaching Milton's Paradise Lost to the kids, and what one of the things that the kids are always surprised about is that in the garden, like they have work, right? It's not just like sipping mai tais on the beach in Cabo, right? It's like they had their work with, and of course the embedded wisdom of that they're gardeners. Of course they're gardeners, right? Because they recognize that they don't create the flower, they don't create the tomato or what have you, right? But they are there to cooperate and work with what has been given to them. So of course the primary way we are to understand our human being is that we are gardeners in this thing that we have received. And of course a good gardener recognizes that you can ramp up production in a garden and shred the soil or whatever, and there's this sort of this cooperation with creation in order to yield proper fruit. And so I think all of that is true. And so maybe what we are doing here is to try to recalibrate the garden, right? That we can't afford to obsess about what kind of handle our spade is going to have attached to it, right? That for so much of the banter has been of like, well, I think that it should be rubber, or I think it should be metal, or I think it should be corrugated, but whatever, and you could really, and hey, like, you ask me what I care. Well, I prefer this kind of handle. You like that kind of handle. Well, I'm right. So you can sort of see how these things degenerate into, kind of absurdities. But maybe that's missing the point, right? I think that's where we find ourselves in this flotilla, right? We find ourselves, it's like, can we like care about something bigger?
Yeah, rather, and also like so a lot of the frame that I see things through is, so I look at, let's say, where does my malady sit? And it's in the selfishness and self-centeredness. and like that, like a really useful thing that I learned a while ago was, because I was like going to all these different meetings and I was trying to find just the right meeting for me, like the right AA meeting or whatever. And maybe you guys can map this to whatever you like, but
literally everything, Chad. I mean, it could be, I'm looking for the right golf course. I'm looking for, the right church, the right pastor. I mean, like, this is absolutely, we shop.
Kale, I'm sure you've heard this, but we don't have Roman Catholics around here. We have Roman Catholics.
Right, exactly. Right. And we're all looking for like the Xanadu parish, right? The unicorn parish. Right? Yeah. So go ahead. I totally get it.
Was like, what I learned was that there wasn't going to be a meeting on the planet that was going to give me what I was looking for. Because there's not enough of it.
Right.
And even I don't know what that is. And like the second I have what I think I want, the shine wears off very quickly. Yeah. And so like an old timer asked me, he said, Chad, what do you think an AA meeting is? I said, well, it's a place where I go to get well. He says, no, it's not. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, it's a place where you go to give. That's it. That's the whole purpose of it. And like, because in that mode, there's never enough of what you can give.
Man, that's so true. God, that hits.
You just never run out of it. Yeah. So like, if you can start to take these little actions that reframe how you kind of see the world that you're in, you start to see, oh yeah, selfishness and self-centered, that we think is the root of all our troubles, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-fear, self-pity. We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate seemingly without provocation. Like that's like the root of me. And so like, if my whole and I've come to see like much of the world's problems that I see are rooted in selfishness and self-centeredness. And we don't like to say that because that's like a pejorative. It's like, I'm not selfish. It's like, come on, dude, just look at how we're wired.
Yeah.
We're selfish.
Well, and something I've been thinking about along those lines, Chad, is that, the whole world as it is currently constructed and operates is geared towards separating me from you and me from Neil and Neil from me. And I mean, the whole thing is geared in that direction, right? And so, and now you have, the sort of the spirit of it in concert with that pulling and rending apart. And, but the good news, right, to me, is that it doesn't have to.
Right.
That we can actually find ways to connect. I mean, look at the three of us. We're in, three, quadrants of the country. Neil's south, I'm east, you're upper Midwest, north, right? It's like we are far away, yet here we are, generating fellowship that is great for the three of us. At least it is for me. I don't know how you all feel, but I also know, interestingly enough, that people are going to watch this. That's wild, right? That they're already part of this conversation, and I can't feel them or sense them or smell them or see them, but I know, because I know this is the way this thing works, is that the three of us are going to get notes from a couple of people saying, "Man, really enjoyed your conversation. It really helped me X with Y or what have you." And like, man, that's ridiculous and amazing and cool and a blessing, like actually a blessing.
Yeah. And it's not just willy-nilly farting around.
Right. That's right.
There is that, which I think is very vital. Like we need some of that. But it's far more than that. This isn't just like sometimes I wonder what the other, because I'll be on YouTube and I see like similar setups and channels and other channels and flotillas I have known nothing about. I wonder what those people are talking about. Do they have the sense that I have, where this is actually very serious, this is deep. This is deep.
We don't know what we're touching into right here, right now. And what I mean by that is like, when did the novel come about as a art form, Cale? I think it's only about 250, 300 years old, right?
Exactly.
So when the first novelists were coming out, was it something that was understood like, oh, this is going to be the future of story for the next 250 years?
Right.
Or I don't think so. And so what we're doing in this space here, it's been around for 5 years, if that, 10 years. And we have no idea what this will be in 10, 20, 30 years. I mean, there's perils to that. Obviously, there's huge perils, but
we're not like, we're not like, oh man, we're gonna go out there, we're gonna change the world. I'm gonna do this. It's not that ain't it. It's like, no, it is a fellowship. It's a deep fellowship, and it can't be. I love
the humbleness of it.
Touched exactly like. I have a difficulty trying to lay out exactly what I mean with that, but it's like the guys that stumbled over a solution to alcoholism, which also never really existed until like 90 years ago, they accidentally tripped over the solution and it happened to be God.
Yeah. It's prophetic, right? I mean, we actually vastly underestimate the historical destruction of alcohol. Like, you look at average alcohol consumptions by, whatever, like 25-year increments or what have you, man, like they drank a lot, and
it killed bacteria. I mean, the water.
Yeah,
that's part
true.
of
it. Yeah. Right. That's fair. But we're talking about booze, right?
Right. I'm not against alcohol.
Right.
Which is interesting. But so like the point is, for thousands of years since man's crushed grapes, there's a small percentage of people who are just like me, chronic alcoholics, who desperately wanted to stop but found they couldn't. And then 90 years ago, a couple of drunks accidentally tripped over a solution. Like, and like today, and after 3 years of trying to help people, you know how many people they found stayed sober? About 40. And they were like, it was like discovering a new continent. That's why the book was written, and then later the meetings happened. But and today I can walk into a meeting, there's 250 people there, and half of us don't give a shit that the meeting exists. It's like, what? The alcoholic hasn't changed. He's still the same. So and so I guess sorry, I'm not trying to
You're
preach.
proclaiming the gospel. I mean, that's genuinely
No, but
what
yeah,
you're
you
doing.
really are. You really are, Chad. I think that's important. Yeah, you're because look, we're very comfortable thinking and talking out loud about patterns, right? But what you're saying here is really profound, and it is, the gospel is the gospel, and the gospel has been the gospel since Jesus was walking around doing his thing, right? And yet the fact that AA doesn't get discovered until less than 100 years ago, and what it discovered was the most ancient pattern of all, is remarkable, and I think telling and illuminative of why it works, and how dim we can remain, even after we thought we knew the gospel. Well, man, there's another element, aspect, fractal of the gospel that we needed to discover, and it took us almost 2,000 years to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's telling.
And so I think about this as it relates to what Jordan Hall is mentioning here about about no man left behind.
Yeah.
We call each other home.
Yeah.
That attitude. So like, you have altitude, which is, I think, Christ centric. For me, it's God centric. That's the altitude. But an attitude is out here. It's with my fellows, and that's very important. I need both. And so when he mentions that, I wonder, and I've often wondered this, even back before I was Christian, I would go to churches and stuff, and I'd go there just to listen. And I'd be wondering, what are these guys doing from Sunday to Sunday?
Yeah.
And at that time, it was more of a critique. And now today, especially the church I'm in now, it's 175 years old. It's very tied to its community. And 70% of them are in their 70s and getting older.
Yeah.
And that's going to come quick, like the reality of that situation.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, how can I better not only be somebody who is trying to, because I don't like proselytizing. I don't think it works personally, but how can I better be a brother in Christ, even to those who don't know I'm doing that, and to those who will not become Christian? How can I better be a disciple, right? Even to those who don't know I'm discipling. And that's what I think you're doing in some sense, right? You're
what
sorry.
comes to my mind, and Cale, feel free to riff on this, but what comes to my mind is the road to Emmaus. They're walking in the wrong direction. And he's like, yeah, tell me about it. Like, whoa, this guy,
But look at the vanishingly small opportunity moment there. I mean, it's two guys who were like down for it, right? I mean, they were in Jerusalem, and they were part of that rocket ride. And they're not the inner ring guys. They're not, the 12 apostles. They're not even like, the sort of the next level disciples. They're and they're walking away. Like, what an opportunity. It's so small. It's like it's Jesus and two dudes. Like, what? I'm always humbled by the microscopic origin point of this faith that we share, and has built civilizations, and has lost civilizations, and will rekindle civilizations. It's like 12 dudes and a couple of hangers on, like, just bonkers. And like that's wonderful, right? So so there's no internet, there's no book, like there's nothing. Like they're 12 dudes who witness, along with, let's call them another 20 people, women and other folks, and they witnessed the resurrected Christ, this person that they knew intimately. And then from that, like, let's call it max 30 people, that I mean, at any point they could have gotten round up and killed, and so anyway, so those opportunities are just so mind-boggling. So Chad, you're here in this dying church, right? And 70% of the congregation is 70 and older. And you know, in your lifetime, you are going to see that dwindle to you. Okay. Now, from the world perspective, that's a complete catastrophe. That's not, no, can't happen. But you know, you are you, and like you hold that, right? And however imperfect that you have, you know, found yourself in this place in which, you know, you are a bridge, you know, you're a sort of a bearer of what I don't know, wisdom, experience, you know, you hold them in some fascinating way, and like you're going to carry, you know, you're not going to die tomorrow, God willing, right? You know, so sometimes it's one person, you know, it's like some Shakespeare plays, it's like one person lives to tell the tale, you know. In Moby Dick, the entire Pequod, you know, goes under and everybody dies except for two folks at the very end. You know, it's like you just need one person to keep that line going. And obviously there are more than one, right? And I don't know, I don't despair over those kinds of things in quite the same way, because you are an incarnate being, you know, it comes to you. And look what you're doing, right? I mean, like both with your work with AA and these things that we do online, and like now it already hasn't died, Chad. It already hasn't died because you have taken what you have received and you are spreading it. You know, you were casting seed, and so we already won. Like, right?
You
I
are
mean, like
you are
you
way
already
more
won.
punk rock than I thought, Kale. You are way more punk rock.
What do you mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's like yeah, everything's against us. We're gonna win anyway.
Yeah. I remember one time one of my friends said that he had an Irish grandmother or something, and it's like every Irish grandmother like thinks everything's always going to hell, but in the end it'll be fine. And I think that like that's me. You know, it's like everything's a catastrophe. I mean, just look around. You know, I don't have special eyes to see. You can all see it too. Just some people like to admit it and some people don't. But I really do believe in the end it's going to be great.
That's hilarious. Neil and I were just talking about that this morning, and he was saying like talking about because like I've said for a while, and people have, I don't know that if I've gotten some pushback on it. They think I'm being really negative, but I'm just like, I don't know, man. I don't see us, like us, society as a whole, being able to pull itself up from a swan dive that it's got itself in and just change its mind and do that. Like that doesn't, that I don't think that's possible because we're so wrapped up in self. And like and the reason why like another model obviously that I can kind of lay this over is like alcoholics don't just wake up one day and say, you know, I think I'm just gonna quit and be done. You know, it's like no, they continue down. Like it's like spiritual help or alcoholic death. Tell me how bad the alcoholic death is.
Can we talk a little bit more on that? I want some details.
Right, yeah. Tell me how bad that is. It's like, well, I mean, that's why I think like the whatever the Kairos moment seems to be, and what it's coming to, it, like, I'm right there with Peugeot, and he says I think it's just going to get a lot worse before it gets better, and like that could be daunting, but you know, like, there's this line in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous that says, remember, alcohol is cunning, baffling, and powerful. Without there is too much for us, but there is one who has all power, and that one is God. May you find him now. And one day I was reading that, and it said, alcohol is cunning, baffling, and powerful, but there is one who has all power. That one is God. And I thought, holy shit. God had the power of alcohol, and he used it to bring me to my knees, to bring me to him.
So Chad, I don't know if you knew this, but what are the three words? Cunning,
baffling, powerful.
Okay. Got a feeling where Kale's going here.
So when Adam and Eve eat the fruit, that Satan in the serpent convinces first Eve and then Adam to eat. The way that two things that popped in my head. Number one, we call it an apple because of Milton, right? Prior to that, there were different there were different depictions of it, but it really kind of solidified into an apple through Milton. And for the English in the 17th century, alcohol, apples were used primarily for hard alcohol. Right? So hard cider was a big thing. So it was always associated with kind of like euphoric, specifically euphoric drunk, high, right? And so that's number one. Number two, when they eat the fruit, they describe it. Milton describes it as if Eve has sort of tasted the way that an alcoholic would describe having a drink after a dry spell, right? It's just like, it's like immediately, yeah, right. And it's immediate, right? So, you know, even in that pattern, right? It's, you know, cunning, you know, powerful, baffling. That is the plan of cunning and guile by Satan himself, right? By the dissembler, is to be those things and to embody those three things. And so I think it makes perfect sense. It's total sense.
Yeah. But I also, as I said, I mean, if alcohol is powerful and God has all power, that means he had the power of alcohol.
Yeah.
And though he might have used it, or, you know, the accuser might have used it for bad, God used it for good.
Yeah.
And I see this all the time. Like, I've seen somebody look as yellow as Homer Simpson at 30 years old, who actively tried to drink himself to death, come to a type of bottom and desperately did something else about it. And he's still sober today, and he gives himself to service to others and seeking God. And that's why I don't think, like, society as we're in now is like, I mean, why would we stop acting the way we do? Like, everything is so like cunning, baffling, and powerful.
Yeah.
It's amazing until it's
question.
not.
After every Mardi Gras period, and we're in a Mardi Gras period right now, whether we like it or not, we're in a Mardi Gras period. But after every Mardi Gras period, there's always a Lent. And really the question is, will it be forced upon us, or, you know, take it upon our hearts? Yeah.
No, that's
so
right.
it's like one of my favorite awkward expressions, Kale. It's circumcise your hearts, y'all.
Yeah.
And,
Y'all. Yeah.
Oh, we don't actually say that down here, but I remember reading that multiple times in the Old Testament. It's like, what the heck does circumcise your heart mean? But that's what it means. It means your hearts are hardened. They're not receptive to correction. They're not receptive to repentance. Yeah. It's like the tearing of the clothes, right? It's I'm naked once again before God. So.
Right. And it's necessary, like in a weird sort of way, because, you know, and, you know, what is no one's closer, you know, this is why prisoners have a particular grace, right? Because they recognize that they live at the mercy of others all day, every day, right? And so there's a peculiar insight that one gets in that we all need, though none of us are going to sort of elect to be prisoners, but you know, but then just like you said, Neil, it's like, yet we all are really prisoners to our appetites, and we don't like to admit those things, right? And so, Chad, once again, like to your point, the reason why the pattern is so powerful for you is that you see it everywhere, and you see it everywhere for a very real reason. You know, it's not you like hero worshiping this thing that got you out of a pit. It's that, did that too, you know, but it's that, no, it's actually, it's the pattern that all of us need, because all of us are degenerate that way, right? So there, Neil, you know, I'm going to make a plug here for the Total Depravity.
The Primacy of Grace.
Yeah, that's right. You know, it's, you know, it swirls around the same mystery.
And I still have it, right? I still have a draw to the cunning, baffling, and powerful.
Yeah.
You know, like, I was like 5 years sober, and I was watching it was on Netflix, It was called The Dirt. It was the Motley Crue movie.
Okay.
And there's
Yeah.
a scene in there where Nikki Sixx is sitting in his closet, and he's, reaching his bottom.
Yeah, right.
And when he's there, he's got like this pistol. It's just a dark scene. But
Yeah,
I was thinking, part of me was saying, there's something really attractive about that.
Wow.
And it made me step back and was
Wow.
like, weird. Like, why is, like, there'll be times where just the weirdest times where, like, one day I would wake up and I'd think, it'd be a good idea is if I like hitchhiked to California and just was like a beach bum drunk. Like,
Sure.
Like that thought just passes in an ear and went out the other. It's like, where did that come from? And like, this is, I've learned to have, and I'm not inflating myself here. I'm just being honest. I've learned to have really great respect for my ability to destroy beautiful things. Like, I have to have really good respect for my ability to fall asleep at the wheel and destroy beautiful and freely given things. And
well, you better, right? I mean, not just you. I mean, we better respect the heck out of that, right? Because one of the the sort of JBP-isms that I really appreciate is he really will talk very frankly about the burden of your own being. To shoulder that. I really like when he talks that way because we've been lied to about that, and part of that burden, so you're talking honestly, Chad, part of the burden that you bear is that you get the attractiveness to want to just blow it all up.
Mm-hmm.
There's a and that's real, and I look as a as a husband and as a father and as a teacher, man, I really get the desire just to like freaking walk away. Right?
Yeah.
Like walk away, man. Why am I doing all what is this none of it means anything anyway, right? Which is so the chirping. It's the chirping of the serpent in your ear, right? And so it colonizes your imagination. You start fantasizing about X, Y, and Z, right? It's like that's absolutely part of it. And so the to shoulder the burden of being is to take that up too, right? And recognize that part of being a man, is to recognize that I have monster in me, but I also have Christ in me, and again, I don't want to be sort of too pat or new agey about it, but there's a war there, and all of us have to admit that, but that doesn't go away. I think that, as you point out, like that doesn't go away. You have to tame that.
That's to tame that. I think it's a bad idea to rest on the idea of gratitude as mere thought. Like gratitude is action. It's it's like love is a verb. Same with gratitude.
It's like faith is what you do.
Yes. Well, it's kind of like you can start gratitude through prayer. In that prayer is like that initial step of choosing gratitude, you could say, and then to the what St. Paul, you pray without ceasing. It's like, am I praying right now while I'm talking? Yes, I'm praying while I'm talking. If I'm aimed at the appropriate thing, let's say
we're aligning ourselves and resonating with, deep music.
That's the Lord's Prayer, right? Like I've wanted to talk about the Lord's Prayer for a long time with people because, like, it's just it's one of those things where it's so. You hear it so often. I don't know how much we actually think about it, but like the idea that there is no I in the Lord's Prayer, like the whole thing, in my opinion, is it has nothing to do exactly with me. It has to do with us. So like it's not. There's no
our us. We like it's like it always already is communal, even when I'm saying it alone in my room.
Yes, that's right. Which I believe all prayer should be exact. I mean, that's my personal opinion. Like, that's why I find it difficult. If I'm praying for others, even, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to pray for. I just say, if I'm doing like, what do they call that? Where you're just saying a prayer off the top of your head.
Extemporaneous prayer.
Yeah. Like, include people's names. I just say their names. I don't know what I'm saying. Like, I don't know, man. But
that's right, Joe. That's right, Chad. That instinct is absolutely right. It's an invocation of the person through name. It's powerful.
Yeah.
And it's our birthright as sons of Adam, right? We name things.
So about naming, real quick. So the parable where they're surrounding the woman, the sinner, they're going to stone her. And then Jesus begins writing in the sand.
Love that.
And okay, so here's why I think I'm right about this. It says they leave from oldest to youngest. They leave from oldest to youngest.
In order.
In order. I think he's writing their names because there's nothing that scares someone more than someone you don't know who says, "You're a Cale Zeldin. I know who you are." And the oldest, the closest to judgment, the closest to, in some ways, the
that's great. I really like that.
Christ.
And of course, he's Christ, so he knows your name. Right? You know,
but think, because one of the topics I wanted to discuss with Chad, we don't have to discuss this. I wanted to discuss this with Luke, but it's like the fear that keeps people from participating, let's say, in this community or not a community that we have, right? And it's it's that named thing. It's that like, oh, it's me, like I'm putting myself out there, and then it's to the end of time, it's me and all of my nakedness to the, that's terrifying. But the question is, so I've said this before, like I'm more terrified of God than I am of people. Like I'm like, anyway.
Yeah,
well,
no,
don't get me wrong. Like my love of God is greater, thanks be to God. But like,
I think that's essentially what the whole space is about. This channel and all this shit has nothing to do really with me or with you guys. This has to do with excuse me.
Well, Chad,
that's why it's nameless.
Nameless is in the title. I mean,
right?
That's the flip, right? You flipped it. You've invoked it by flipping it, right? That's the
conceit. So it has to do with like maybe somebody is stumbling around in the wilderness, in the desert, and trips over something, and in that moment, maybe they find a beginning to something different. That's the whole point. And we get the joy of doing silly shit along the way,
right,
which is very fun. And like I've had some of the most incredible conversations. You know that flow state you're talking about. If you're a musician, you'll know like what it's like to be in a pocket. Like that feeling is just so perfect. Like I've had that in conversations with people over on the Discord. One of the first times that ever happened, it was Luke and I. Luke Thompson and I were talking in the Discord, and it was just like. Whoa, like and I've experienced that, a lot of that in person, like doing like a fifth step with somebody and things like that, and it's powerful. This is this idea, these things that these incredible gifts that are just the most unlikely of things that could ever happen, like being able to speak and hear and understand words that we're sharing is incredible. And these are the most incredible miracles, and they're just constantly flowing out of our mouths all the time, and we don't even think about how incredible it is. And that's why I'm doing this. I wanted to eat at the table, and that's why I did this channel, just for fun, and the great joy of like when you hear something that somebody else shares, it's like, oh my God, and like I don't know, I can't recite half the shit I hear on these spaces. I can't, like if you were to give me a quiz on it, I'd fail. But I know when I hear it, I'm hearing it, and like the more I participate, the more I'm able to actually gain a confidence, so I can actually go out, because I'm awkward, man. Like I feel awkward around people, but this helps me, so I can actually go and have a conversation with the customers at work. Just be okay with them. And this is all great gifts. So I don't know how much we got into the whole thing with Jordan here, but maybe we did. I mean, so how can we better do what he's saying? This idea, like specifically the no man left behind, and helping call each other home. Like how do we really do that?
Well, I think we need to stop being obsessed with scale. I think we live in a world where you can win World War II by, ramping up the war machine. And so all the factories in Detroit are doing this and all the people over here doing that. And this is massive scale that is mind boggling. Right.
Mm.
But that's why I fixate on the road to Emmaus. Like the road to Emmaus is like one Jesus and two dudes. And it's at that level. It's at that radical level that we live this thing out, So when Jordan seemed to claim or answer to John as like, this is an answer to the meta crisis, is that we experience the meta crisis imaginatively as meta, but individually as acute. And so, it's deeply helpful to me to know that other people are going through a meaning crisis. It is truly, but we get to work out that meaning crisis, one at a time, here at a time. And so there's a secondary scale to it, but we are paying attention to each other right now. And so that's where discipleship happens, right? I mean, if you think, if when you think about like, how did the gospel just like actually spread, and we have a couple of these spectacular moments where 300 joined after hearing Peter speak on the day of Pentecost and all those kinds of things, right?
I personally like Legion, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, but you have to imagine then that like there would be these connections. You're like, okay, like there's an after moment where like you get inducted in, one at a time, right? And so and then Peter and Paul, they like walk around and talk to people, and so it's a maybe the meta crisis is in some sense thinking that we can attack it in a meta way and not in an individual person to person way.
I love this so much. Like you have no idea, Kale, how much I love this in so many ways. The fetish of quantity. It's like number of likes, number of subscribers, how rich my life is how many friends I have, like number of comments, like the quantity. I hate it. I hates it.
I hates it.
Yeah. And when I came out of the lurk, and I didn't even realize I was doing this, but as I was realizing that I was doing this, I started to make it conscious, because I think what you're pointing to is the answer. I really do think this is the answer, where aside from me, I don't think anyone else in the corner has stated this outright. And this might be the third time I'm stating it, which is I came out of the lurk to make friendships with individual people, with people that I saw that I'm like, I think I could be really good friends with this person.
Yeah, totally.
And I said that to Chad. I'm like, I think we would get along really well. And a few other people. And it's like, everybody in the corner is like so welcoming, so egalitarian. Come on in. And that's awesome. And genuinely speaking, I'm like that. But I can't control like who I find more interesting or who I really like. And I can't control that. And it's like Christ has favorites, and it's almost like he gave us permission. Seriously. Like Christ, I love this about it's like one of these things we don't like to admit, that it's like, oh, he only takes 3 of them up on the mountain, right? He has a beloved disciple. Right. And it's like, that gives me permission in my life to have a best friend. It gives me permission to have a hierarchy of attention, almost to be like, I'm going to pay the most attention to these people because it's love, but it's like, I'm not pretending to be this egalitarian person that I can't be. I have a favorite. I have my wife. I have my daughter. Like, you know what I mean?
Like, who am I, Lord, that you would come into my house?
Yeah.
And you're like, what? That to me, has to be it. That. I mean, and that to me, those are the parts of the gospel that are just so resonant to me. Like this is so
and so radical, right? If you're trying to win people, and it's like what? Like
Well, when he did the thing with the Legion guy, I think this is what hooked me. This is where my whole conversion happened. Is after he heals him, this nameless dude, walks up to Christ as he's about to leave, and he says, "Can I go with you?" And Christ is like, "No. Why don't you stay here and help your friends and tell them what the Lord did?" Like that, bang. I'm like, oh, yeah.
There's a great sequence in A Man for All Seasons, the story of Thomas More, and he's got this hanger on. His name is Richard, and Richard is really after Thomas to get him a position at court, right? Because he's ambitious, and Thomas is sort of humoring him, and he sort of says at one point, "No, I think you should be a teacher," and he didn't want to be a teacher because he doesn't want to be a nobody, right? And Moore's like, "No, I really think you should be a teacher." And at first you're sort of watching this thing unfold. You're like, dude, come on, Thomas, like do the man a solid. Like, people like, well, and then you realize, and he becomes the sort of the Judas figure, the villain. In the end, he sells Thomas More out. And you realize that Thomas More wasn't being arbitrary. He was being very specific, and he was looking at Richard Rich was his name. He was looking at Richard Rich right in the face and saying, no, you must be a teacher. You must not be a courtier, because when you go to court, you will lose your soul, right? And that like, talk about a kind of radical, individually, Moore saw him, right? But he didn't want it,
So I think a PVK in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
So when because he talks about, he's been in that role before where he has to administrate and manage and govern the whole thing, and he knows where it ends. I saw in my company once, I was in that sort of role where I was managing about 8 to 10 people, and I was doing okay. And I thought I was doing okay, and I was high status, bee's knees.
Right.
And then one of the most experienced people on the team, even more experienced than me, but he was in a technical role, he was leaving the company. And because he was leaving the company, he felt like he could speak frankly to me. And he sat down with me. And it was someone, and it hit, feedback's right when it's coming from a place of love, and it hurts. And it hurts. And when he spoke to me, he's like, I don't think this is the role for you. Like, I don't even remember the specifics of what he said, but it was a place of like genuine care. And it was just and I knew it was honest because he didn't have anything to gain, like only things to lose by telling me this an uncomfortable conversation. Yeah.
So I was just going to say, so this is exactly, so, Chad, you sort of think about your legacy and you think about like your work, part of it for me is I want to be the man who can tell, the young buck, no, or yes, or whatever, right? That so my prayer then is sort of, Lord, make me the man who is able to say the true thing in charity to someone who needs it, because like your kingdom depends upon it, right? And so,
but it has to come from that place of love.
That's right.
Love has to be there.
Yeah, that's right. Not and it's very easy to sort of fall off that. But I think that, like, think of the gift that was to you, Neil. I would imagine that was tremendously informative for you.
Oh yeah.
And that's a moment of mercy too, to be honest with somebody like that.
Yeah. Right. I mean, sometimes it's a severe mercy, right?
In the book or in the brain.
Well, and LARPing works. Like, that's whole Jordan Peterson's act as if. Like, one of the things I always struggled with a bit, and I still struggle with it, would be someone comes to a church service, somehow they think they've come to believe they've made this decision, and then right away you're baptized in that service and you're getting all this stuff or whatever. Like belief comes after action, and like I said, it's a lot of times that you'll see in 12-step programs, many people will be asked to do things that they have no idea why they're being asked to do them. But they start doing them, and then I'm just going to tell you, these amazing things happen. So there's this real practical thing you hear in 12-step programs, which when people are first starting out, they'll say something like, well, maybe they've never even, or maybe they're secular, never been around it, or they've been in church, whatever. And how do you pray? And they'll say, okay, well, here's what you're going to do. Put the shoes that you want to put on in the morning, put them under your bed and get down on your knees, right? And in the morning, say, please keep me sober today. And then at night, before you go into bed, put those shoes under the bed and get on your knees and say, thank you. Okay, so it starts there, right? Please and thank you. But it's getting you into this habit of getting into, like, it's teaching you a very fundamental thing about in the morning and at night. That is the way you start a prayer rule. And then as you start to progress and you start doing more, you're like, well, I'm doing the please and thank you. Like, well, here's this prayer. Read this prayer in the morning. Why don't I want to read that prayer? Well, okay, fine. Who cares? Just read the prayer. So then they start reading the prayer. And you don't know, this isn't going to work or whatever. And all of a sudden they start, this, by the way, this is Chad's story. And all of a sudden he had, it took him a while. He might've said no for a bit, but it literally is like the acting as if actually works, because I think you need to get into act. You can act your way into a right way of thinking. You can't think your way into right way of acting is kind of this thing that people would talk about. And it's that once you start putting some of these spiritual practices in, what'll happen is some tangible, like, you'll be transformed without even knowing why things are working. And all of a sudden you started dancing down, this path. And of course, over time, you hope that grows. And then you start finding the pieces that work for you best. But, getting into some daily program of living, and that includes in your spiritual life too, that actually starts producing results. And then you can morph out to starting to read C.S. Lewis, and then or whatever. The one thing I also do want to point out is I say some of these simple things. And by the way, some people who know a lot of theology, putting your shoes under your bed would be very valuable for you. I'm serious. Like, you need to learn how to do some actual practices. But depending on where someone comes in, the student will appear. If someone's like with Luke, when Luke shows up, he spent 20 years studying all this stuff. You don't have to take him back to 101. You got to meet him where he's at, to have certain conversations.
We all have to be, that's that kenotic self-emptying, man. You always got to meet people where they're at, or else you're not going to communicate with them.
So if you don't have a daily practice, you can roll a savings throw against one by choosing survival, social, wisdom, or heart as the basis for your savings throw. If it's over 10, you take half damage. Under 10, you take full damage from the mind control that follows. And apparently there's T-Grog brand mind control coming. So choose wisely. Survival, social, wisdom, or heart. Choose. Survivalist, prime 17. You're going to be all right. Socialist, you got disciples, whatever that means.
Nice discussion. Very nice.
Windows fella, Baker's Coven against the mind control. That's a 13. Hard folks, that's a natural 1. No bonuses apply. And Indigo kids, you got a 6.
Oh, Grim just came in for the savings throw. So T-Grog, you get your audio figured out. You're here. You're new.
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Can
you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Yeah. Nice discussion. Very nice. I was a Baptist Calvinist for a long time, but I find this stuff interesting because it's I like people talking in a civil manner, and that's about stuff, and it's cool. I used to be a science teacher though, and mathematics, so I like clarity.
Yeah.
I live in Mormon land.
Oh, okay.
And everybody's into feelings, spiritual, and visions, and all this crazy shit. And I see it as a con.
Yeah.
It's a con. So
yeah.
It can be dangerous.
That's where I'm coming from. The problem I have with this, I went to a couple estuary meetings in College Station.
Right, yeah.
It opens the door to a lot of superstitious it's like blow the doors off reality and let's just have all these crazy
cult-like delusional.
Well, the problem is if you read the history of Christianity or the history of the Middle Ages or the history of the ancient world, people had all sorts of crazy ass, well, let's sacrifice our children to Baal,
Kill the witches.
Yeah.
make Baal happy. Well, Baal doesn't exist, so there's no.
Are you?
So that's the problem I have with all this.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any problem with. I love the talking. I love
Yeah.
the dialogue. But in Mormon land, I can tell you this: we're the headquarters in Utah here of white collar crime.
Yeah.
We are the headquarters.
Okay.
And people fall for these scams because they get a spiritual witness telling them that it's great. It's a good thing. And to me, unfortunately, I see parallels here.
Yeah. Well, this is but that's a big reason of why I want you here and value here and want this kind of diversity, because that's a big part of that's what I was just saying. Because if you spend very much time in this little corner of the internet, if you've even figured out what this is, this thing that's coalesced around Paul Vanderklay and Jonathan Bugeaud and John Vervaeke post Jordan Peterson, that's like
Right.
the broad scope. You'll find that in this particular community that's very person oriented, it's really pretty diverse. Like one of my best friends in here is this Sam Tiedemann, who's a biblical Unitarian. He doesn't believe in the Trinity.
Right.
He would be excommunicated from any Trinitarian church, but guess what? That guy knows early church theology.
Right.
Probably better than almost anyone I know. Probably more than anyone I know. I want him here. I want atheists here. Most of the people that are here have in some sense they've felt like a misfit or been excommunicated or deconstructed from Christianity. I mean, I never officially left.
How did you get away from your Baptist Calvinist roots?
Yeah.
How did I get away from it? Well, reading the Bible carefully can do a lot for you in that regard. What I saw in the Bible, and I read a lot of, I was really into it because, this is the truth and this is important and you have to know the truth. It's very important. So I would say the Bible constantly, read church history, but I was reading evangelicalism, a lot of evangelical stuff, evangelical. And I decided to read non-evangelical stuff, right?
Uh-oh.
And actually, I found that modern biblical scholarship actually was more true to the Bible, right? It was more honest about, like Yahweh and Elohim and these other, demigods and angelology and all that stuff. It was more honest about that stuff and more true to the actual Bible than evangelicalism, or I didn't know that much about Catholicism, but I've learned a lot more about it recently, and I know a little bit about Orthodoxy, but not a lot. But reading the Bible diligently, and just kind of thinking, well, what is going? I mean, is this just a mind game I'm playing with myself here? That I believe in Jesus's propitiation for my sins, and what
words like propitiation.
How does that really work? Oh yeah, listen, I look, I still read the Bible.
I don't know what that word is, propitiation.
I know, that's what's so fun about this,
Unfortunately, I very few Christians that, in my experience, ever even finished the New Testament. So I'm interested in, there's an old saying by Thomas Henry Huxley: learn what is true so you can do what is right. Learn what is true so you can do what is right. So I go by these guys like I started reading Huxley, Darwin, people like that. And I go, well, number one, what they're saying is clear. It's clear. Number two, it makes sense, right? If you know the truth, I'm interested in what's true. That's what I'm interested in. If it's orthodoxy,
free,
great.
right?
That's all I'm interested in. I don't care about all this other, but the problem I have in any religious space I've been in, if you like to use that terminology, is people have all these divergent views and there's no way to sort out truth from error or fact from fiction. There's just no way to do it.
So
that's why I like science.
You got out by reading the Bible. Can I just be a little bit more, pry a little bit more and ask how you got into it? Were you raised by Christian parents and just?
I grew up with a lot of alcoholic parents and grandparents, and I think emotionally I felt abandoned, neglected, very sad. And I'm a little bit, if you haven't noticed it, I'm probably a little bit on the spectrum here. Okay. So I'm very obsessive and autistic. Right.
I might know something about that.
So I'm kind of a loner, and I felt very alienated in high school. And I read a book called The Late Great Planet Earth by Hal Lindsey, which was the biggest selling book in the entire 1970s. And that basically said the world was going to end by 1984. Okay. So I read that book and I go, oh my gosh, God loves me. Jesus loves me. This is fantastic. I'm not just some weird guy, who can't talk to girls. And so it's an emotional thing. And I see religion that way. It's an emotional thing. It's emotionally comforting to people. It's very comforting. But the problem is heroin's comforting too. So
I've not done heroin, but I've done psilocybin and cannabis, and they're different. They are different.
Yeah. So there's ways to comfort yourself besides these ways that can lead to, and most people that are religious are very nice. Like most people are nice, but I was not a nice person as a religious person. You guys would all be in hell. I mean, no question. There's no question about it. You'd all be going to hell.
Lots of people think I'm going there.
Hell's an eternal pit of burning fire where you're literally burning. Okay. So that doesn't make for a nice person. That makes for an asshole. Okay.
This sounds like a version of Christianity, though.
Well, that's a version that's very popular in church history.
Well,
extremely popular.
This is what my buddy Jason, who's in the little corner, likes to say all the time. He's like, that's fine. Like, you want to believe that, but then if you're also a Christian, then you're called to love your enemies. So you're going to hell then.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, it doesn't make sense. I grant that, Luke. It doesn't make any, from my perspective now, it doesn't make sense. It's ridiculous.
Get in that pit. Absurd. Here he is.
It's absurd. God is love. God is all loving. God's perfect love. God. Not only is God not just love, he is love.
Yeah,
he's sending people to hell because they don't know anything about Jesus. It's like nuts.
Well, come over to our side, T. Grog. We're Pocket Distasis people here on Grail Country, so you're fitting great.
Yeah,
Luke did a whole tirade on what you just mentioned there, and he coined it POS theology, and he set off quite the firestorm here in this little corner.
Well, I appreciate that, Lance. The problem I have with Paul Vanderklay, I'm on his case constantly. He's confessionally a reformed minister.
Paul.
That's what they believe.
On notice.
That's what they believe.
Listen, I've pushed Paul on this for years and years and years. Paul,
he won't be honest about it. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Well, he is, but Paul has had a few conversations on hell stuff. I mean, the topic of hell and universalism are two of the big pet topics, the Trinity that this corner loves to talk about. I mean, it's all, and there's very diverse opinion on all that stuff.
Well, and I would also say this, I don't want to out Paul. And I don't think Paul's certainly not going to go against much of the Reformed theology. Heck, he's a CRC pastor. However, because he is a CRC pastor, he probably has some shades that he wouldn't proclaim publicly because he understands his role of what he has to be as a CRC pastor. But I bet if given the freedom,
Lance, conspiracy theory.
Confirmed.
I know, because the reason why I know this is I have pastor friends who there are things that, and they're fine being within a certain, they understand because of their responsibility and what they are, their job they're given. There are certain things that they might believe different shades that might shock the conscience of others in their denomination, and they won't say it. But, you know, if they happen to retire, they might actually tell you a couple of things that they really believe that might, you know, go a little bit against what, but because of the role, like you understand, hey, this is the gig, and I'm okay with the gig because of some of these other things. So,
right. Here's a great quote from a Christian pastor, but like, it's very hard to get a man to see something if his salary depends upon him not seeing it.
Well,
you can apply that to religion. You can apply it to a lot of things, though.
What's the timeline on you like becoming out as a physicalist atheist versus being a pastor? How old were you? When did all that happen?
Well, I was never a pastor, thank God. I took Greek in college. I got a C on it just because I knew the Gospel of John pretty well in English. But I got out. I was a Christian from 1974 to 1984, roughly.
So when the world didn't end, you were like, well.
Yeah, the world didn't end. That's correct. It didn't. Maybe it did end, metaphorically speaking. See, you know,
that's not
maybe in our imagination it ended. See,
I just wanted to toss in like there was a checkbox for my church that said, "Do you support the statement of faith?" And it's like at some point I was like, "Can I support this thing even though I don't believe it?" Because I want to say I don't know.
Getting too technical, Gavin.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I look around and I see people who like have their lives transformed, and this thing that they believe is a part of it. And it's like, man, I like that people's lives get better, even though I don't like, I'd rather say I don't know and pray that God would reveal it to me. Right.
And I think to me, that's like premature. Like that's so like Gavin, you've mentioned this previous, like you mentioned that you were kind of presented with that. And I'm like, that is so cart before the horse. Someone who's new, bringing his family, how can you ask that question after a month? You know, and then some of that is like to get baptized, you do have to, there's some, they'll say, okay, this is, and it's not going to be the Westminster Confession of Faith, but they're going to list out some, you know, a whole bunch of propositions. Do you believe this stuff? And you're like, dude, I've been here a month, man. Like, how could I even?
Maybe it'll take 10 years. Maybe it'll take 10 years or 20 years. Like, it's like, why do I have to say yes or no to something? Right. I told him, I emailed him. I said, you need to change your checkbox and let me fill in, I don't know. You know,
that's true.
Which, by the way, I think with some of those things, if we're all being honest, I think 20 or 30 years in, some of those things I would still like to check box, and will probably die with a checkbox of I don't know.
Yeah.
Just to go back on a part of Tigrog's story, speaking to the emotional aspect of the evangelical gospel, I think that's one of the things that I'm attracted to in this corner. It's Martin Shaw, I think, phrased it as the rewilding of Christianity, which is taken away from the safe Jesus and like encountering the wild Jesus, the one that makes you uncomfortable and not just makes you feel good because you think the world's going to end. Neil.
Hey, what's up? So I just watched the Malcolm and Simone episode on Knights and Kings. They go into this whole like thing about how there's 4 types of men: kings, knights, philosophers, and mystics. And the general point is that like most people should be knights and a few people should be kings, and then the best people should be philosophers, and no one should be a mystic because they only serve the stupid people.
Oh,
stupid people aren't necessary. At least that's what I took away from it. And I think it's very vain for everyone to think they're not a stupid person. Because I think
Dunning-Kruger, man.
like everyone is stupid. We don't know at all what's going on. And people kind of look down on the granny faith or whatever, the grandma
Yeah.
who just like goes along with everything. It's like, why not? Why not go along with everything? And also struggle and think about things, but like I
Yeah,
think
not everyone's path
yeah,
is
yeah.
your path or
And
someone else's.
there's no way for the stupid people to not be necessary. Like, as one, I really hope that that's
Well, there's a big
We're supposed to love the lost sheep. Like,
yeah.
right.
and the lost sheep like end up getting lifted up very high.
There's a big ego.
I think that's why people with integrity have to be people with deep character have to be in the king, because like T. Crow just said, is that those people will be harmed. They will be they'll be taken advantage of. So you have to have people that are searching for truth, and then people that are leading the people that are searching for truth. And back to T. Krogan, I was curious on. So here we are in 2024. That's 20 years or 30 years that you haven't been, I guess, a Christian. Like, so you obviously went through, in the aughts, the new atheism spectrum, and in the last 5 to 10 years, now you're finding yourself, and I'm sure that kind of bolstered a lot of confidence in your journey. And now you're finding yourself basically in a conversation with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Christians. Like, what's that? How does that fit into your story?
Well, it depends on what you mean by Christian, right?
Hey, now we're talking.
I would say this. Look, I think that I like talk. I think all you guys are quite intelligent, by the way. Okay, that's not to be, flattering you or anything, but the fact that you're even willing to have a conversation like this is kudos to you all, because I can tell you that when I was a Baptist, you try and talk to people about stuff like this, their eyes would go like glaze over or something.
Similar experience to me.
Yeah. The reason I want to know what I think is, well, I lost my wonderful wife of 33 years 3 years ago.
Sorry about that, T.
I've been one of the luckiest sons of bitches on the planet. Okay. I have a wonderful family. I married a fantastic woman, fantastic, way above my pay grade. I live in a resort. I'm healthy. I mean, I've had a fantastic life. And so I'm getting older. You want to contemplate these things. You say, well, I was wrong about being a crazed Baptist. I was wrong about that. I was completely convinced that I was right. Totally convinced. And so I want to stay open-minded. On the other hand, I don't want to be a chump. Okay. And, people have tried to get me to join the Mormon church. And I said, well, number one, to be a temple worthy Mormon, I got to pay 10% of my gross income. Okay. So this better be true. 10% of your gross before taxes. That's a lot of money, depending on what money you have. So I'm interested, to me, this is engaging. It's fun. I like the intellectual stimulation. I like to learn new things from different people. Atheism is not emotionally comforting. It is not. Okay. Churches are much nicer. there's a feeling of, I think it's an evolved thing. Churchers are much nicer, even if you don't believe a damn thing they're talking about. All right. They're nice people there, and it's a community, and they're like, playing church. And atheism is, but see, if I want emotion, if I'm really having a struggle with emotional comfort, I'll go see a psychiatrist. See, that's the way I approach it. In other words, if I'm having a crisis of depression, or my God, what is the meaning of life or something, I'll go see a psychiatrist or a cognitive behavioral therapist or somebody like that, where I can talk things out and work things out. And yeah, so I'm, if you guys, what I'm saying is I'm interested in what this quote space has, if anything.
I think
for me.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I've done a lot of therapy, spent a lot of money on therapy, and there's a truth to the fact that you're spending money for this person. It's their job, and that's a very different kind of relationship versus a mutual meeting of people that are kind of searching. But not to diminish the help that it can have and has had in my life, but it's not the same. It's a different kind of relationship,
Yeah, I just want to add that from what Tigran said, it sounds like you've chosen the right place to play, because your story maps on, even though differently to a lot of the stories I've heard from people around this space. We got to a level, we had a certain level of certainty in something, and that came crumbling down. And then now we're trying to figure out, okay, now what? And yeah.
That's been one of my big things lately too, this is a quote that I love, but it's like, tell me the God you don't believe in, I probably don't believe in it either. Or tell me the fill in the blank you don't believe in, I probably don't believe in it either. Like I was thinking as you were talking about all those things, I bet you and I could sit down and have a conversation about theology and a lot of problems that you had of things that you were taught. And I bet we'd agree on a lot. I bet we'd agree on a whole lot.
Yeah.
I don't want to monopolize the conversation here, guys.
Well, but
because I'm autistic, I don't get the social cues that well.
No.
Like when people are saying, "Shut the fuck up, man." I mean, I don't get the feedback. See,
I think part of it is that I'm very concerned with this space, especially in live streams in hospitality. You've never popped on before. I've wanted you to hop on before. If you have something to say, I definitely want you to talk. I talk plenty. So that's all.
I like to listen, but I'm kind of a gadfly, so I just look. Everything is a mixed bag, in my experience. Jordan Peterson says, he says some very good things. Paul and Jonathan Peugeot, on the other hand, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about half the time. The up, the down, the hierarchy, the up, the thing.
You're doing it.
It's like, I go, what the hell is this guy talking about?
Yeah, I have a hard time with these things.
I up and it's like the lateral and the horizontal. It's like, what?
But this is part of
what the hell is going on here?
Yeah, one person's up as another person's down. Like, it's so weird.
What's so fun about that is I just got this message the other day, because in my live stream yesterday I mentioned, and I would love to know what you think.
My live stream yesterday. Hey, real quick, Tigran, can we get back to the witches in the estuary? That was a fascinating topic. The Red Church card of the show is the Seven of Hearts. It sounds like
you're hilarious.
You went to estuary and ran into witches, and it was 2 estuaries, and they were overrun with witches, and it made you uncomfortable. Can you talk about that some more, please?
There were no witches there, as far as I know. I mean, maybe they're undercover witches, or they were lower on they were under. Well, there's the horizon, and then there's the hierarchy, and then there's what's underneath. Maybe they were down there somewhere. I don't really know.
Well,
There was a
you were
Baptist
turned
guy.
off.
There was a
Yeah, you were turned off
Baptist.
by a couple.
There was a Baptist, an Episcopalian who didn't believe in the resurrection, and a Catholic guy who said, well, alchemy was great or something. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, it was fun, but because I was a creedalist, shame on me. St. Athanasius says, this is what you must believe, or you cannot be saved. This is the Catholic faith. Whosoever believes this is okay. If you don't believe it, you're damned, basically. It's clear. It's not the hierarchy and the lower. I see this as like Gnosticism. It's like inner light, and wow, I've got the inner light. Jordan's got the inner light. Jonathan's got it. Paul's got it. And you're trying to figure out, what is it? It's like mystical. So,
Yeah.
like, if you ever seen the movie Mystery Men, there's a guy in there. There's a character in there called the Sphinx, and he says all these weird things that sound profound, but they're just bullshit. If you don't master your rage will become your master. The Sphinx.
That's
It
an interesting
sounds,
one. You just mentioned as an interesting one.
Yeah,
Master your rage. Like I'm talking to my children about this topic specifically, like 2 nights in a row. So
see the movie.
Okay.
And you'll see that this character is like, he says a lot of this stuff, and it's like people are going, wow, man, it's like there's nothing to it. So I don't know. But
the only thing I would push back on is that, I mean, that's the same story that the new atheists were telling people. You're the brights. You've got the inner knowledge. It's the same story.
Well, I would recommend, and by the way, I'm a big book reader. If you guys have any books that you'd recommend that I read, I'm reading Dominion right now by Tom Holland. Okay. But I'd read An Atheist's Guide to Reality by Alex Rosenberg. That's
that Reformed
hardcore.
pastor's colonizing your mind, T. Grog. He's got you reading Dominion.
Unfortunately, and I have a kind of a bias with this because I've dealt with so many Christian apologists. Okay. And I find them disingenuous and lying by omission to
High five.
Amen.
to an enormous degree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
So I am poisoned, okay, by dealing with Christian apologetics. I'm gonna get off my camera here, but I want to show you a book. I paid for this book. I paid for the research for this book. It's a Christian apologetics book by a Christian apologist that I knew very well. We were like buddies, best buds.
I hope I know.
But I paid for this book, and then I'm reading this book, and that helped kick me over into atheism. Because I said, there's so many lies and half-truths in this book.
You got the playbook.
That this is bullshit. My book, I commissioned this book, and I paid a lot of money back in the 80s for this book to be written. And the guy that wrote it was smart, very smart. And I read the book, and I go, that's wrong. That's wrong. Every page had bullshit on it. Okay? Every page, literally. And I go, if this is the best somebody can do to defend Christianity, Christianity's false. It's false. I'll show you the book. I'm going to turn my camera off because I'm sitting in my underwear here. Holding my house. We got to keep it PG here.
Oh man,
it's hard to find the best. I'm a bit on that. My mind works in a similar way, but try to solve that problem of finding the best person to write that book. It's like that's a hard problem.
A Christian apologetics book.
Here's the book.
Anything, the best. Try to find the best at anything.
The New Atheism and the Erosion of Freedom.
I paid for this book. I paid for the research. It's bullshit. It's bullshit.
What exactly about this bullshit?
And who's the author?
Robert A. Morey,
Okay.
a doctorate from Westminster Seminary. He was a minor
Westminster.
apologist, but I knew him quite well. And he's got a lot of blurbs on here for how great the book is from The Usual Suspects. So, and I told Bob, I told Bob it was bullshit, and I was trying to help him correct it, but then I finally just said, look, I don't believe this stuff anymore, and good luck. And but yeah, so we wouldn't have a dialogue like we're having here, certainly. But he told me basically that a lot of people fall away and then they come back, and blah blah blah. So
It's true.
Maybe
Yeah.
you're just not elect. You ever thought of that?
well,
I'm just kidding.
he's got a video on YouTube, Bob Moore. You can look it up. It's called "Why God Hates Some People." It's amazing. God hates people, and he goes, it's a lie that God loves everybody. He hates
Sinners in
people.
the
Well,
hands
given
of an
the-
angry God.
Given the fact that you told me that, I would bet that some of the issues you're having with that might be a lot of what Luke would call POS. That's a cleaned up version of piece of shit theology. And so he has big issues with certain points of popular theology.
Oh yeah.
And that's why I think when Luke says like some of these things that you're pointing at or having a disagreement with, Luke's probably sitting there going, oh, I bet if he and I had a conversation about all the stuff you thought was BS, Luke probably agrees with you on probably 90% of it.
Well, and this is one of my big struggles with, because I get into this with Christians all the time, because I self-identify as a Christian universalist, believing that eventually all will be reconciled to God, however you conceive of that, which I don't know. I can't lay out the details of how it's going to happen. But a lot of people will say, they'll criticize that, saying like, well, that just will make people flippant about morality or whatever, or it will make people just like not care about things. But the problem is there are so many. How many people like yourself have been told that God and the way that hell works out is this, what's called infernalism, eternal conscious torment, where God is mainly a distant, divorced, uncaring judge who just is going to punish you based off of choices that you made and whatever level of maturity for an infinite, unending duration of time in a literal burning hell. A lot of people have left Christianity because they've been told that's the only form of God that you can accept. And if you reject that, then you're not a Christian. Well, I don't agree with that framing of what God is.
I just wanted to chime in. There was a conversation with my wife this morning, and it's like, I see a pattern here, like what's happening here, and that like we can challenge like the institutions, the traditions, the confessions, and like the internet and YouTube and these kinds of conversations. We get to do that, and it's happening in many spaces.
Yep.
Like it's happening in construction, it's happening with food, and it will make its way into like the systems of education. These things will change because of the kinds of conversations we have where people are actually pursuing the truth, trying to care for people. Like all this stuff's very good.
Yeah.
Just
And
because
T-Rob, I
they
think-
did it that way doesn't mean it's going to stay that way forever.
I think the thing that the projects on the search for truth and why this space can sometimes feel Gnostic or mystical and woo-woo, as the millennials say, is because the search for truth is a very kind of concrete idea. It appears like a very concrete idea, this thing outside of you. Science will reveal this. Religion will reveal this. Is this true? All of these arguments sound. Can I get everything to fit? When I think what this space is, or even in the journey into therapy or whatever, is a search for an internal truth, and and this has been hit on in this argument already today. Can you sign on to this, confession of faith at your church? Check the boxes, like cart before the horse. When am I dealing with myself truthfully on it? Am I looking at myself truthfully? That has way more impact on your life than the literal nature of Scripture, or the literal or if the scientific proofs of X, Y, and Z. Those things will not have very much impact in your life versus if you can be honest with yourself about who you are, and then in relationship to the people that you do life with. I think that has to be the foundation for the search for truth, not the late great Planet Earth, or not the God delusion. Like, I think that the search for truth has to start within yourself. And that's why it can sound so Gnostic-y here. And then you can build on top of that. And somebody just made a comment about that those things can help purify the truth, but it has to start with being personally honest with yourself.
That's just so, I agree with you, but what's really hard about that is a ruthless internal honesty means you have to rid yourself of fear. And
yeah, it does.
Good luck. Good luck.
Listen.
Well, and
I've done it, man. I've done it. I in a moment discovered the difference between fear and being scared. I was no longer afraid of the truth, of every shitty thing, shameful thing that I had ever done to the person I was supposed to love forever. And coming to that, all of a sudden I was no longer afraid, and I no longer feared the truth. I was still scared of the consequences of what the truth meant for my life.
Yeah.
But you do have to face it, and that's the fear of trust, of radical trust. Abraham and Isaac's story sounds like absolute bullshit. What the hell is God asking this man to do? He's asking him for radical trust. I don't care about the context of child sacrifice. I mean, I should care, whatever, but he's asking for radical trust, that trusting is better for some reason. And that was an internal situation between a man and God.
Yeah, absolutely.
T-Grog, I gotta go. I gotta head out here. But T-Grog, I just want to. I think it seems that, by the way, the fact that you found your way into this little corner through the Luke Thompson and Grail country world is amazing to me.
The wooiest of all the corners.
The wooiest of all. But your voice and the questions you're asking are going to be really important, because a ton of people are out there, I know, they're watching these videos who have gone down that path and are kind of where you're at. And so the questions you have and how you want to challenge certain things, I think, are like massively important for us. The other thing, when I've listened to you, it's very obvious to me that you're a seeker. You've been seeking different things, and you found yourself in this place that feels good for you now. But you're still out there. You're still seeking a little bit. You're open-minded. This corner is built on people who are willing to have these good faith conversations, even if we would disagree with things. And when you mentioned, so I would just say this, like, I used to consume in the early 2000s a lot of apologist sort of stuff, and I can be honest with you, it makes my toes curl a little bit right now, and I can't watch it anymore. So, but that doesn't mean that it's bad or it's not serving its purpose for certain people at a certain time. But like, when you said that, I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm with you. Like, I cannot, like Williams Lane Craig and stuff like that. Like, I just can't even stomach it anymore. And so, but I have found my way into a full belief in a God of my understanding, and a place where I'm going to practice it, so on and so forth. So keep on the path, brother. And even if you stay, was it a physicalist, atheist, or something like that through your whole time in the corner, keep coming back.
One of my, also, like, the guy who started the Bridges of Meaning Discord, which is this other thing in this corner. I mean, and he doesn't participate in a lot more in here, but I don't know if he'd call himself a physicalist. He's an atheist. I mean, he's not a Christian. I don't know. Because here's the thing. This is how you get into groupthink and echo chambers. When everybody self-identifies around a certain thing and is repeating all the same platitudes and Sunday school answers, you actually stop seeing. This is why you can't tell the differentiation. It just all becomes this monolithic one. You need that diversity to be able to think well. Otherwise, you have no contrast, and you can't see without contrast.
I'm curious, T-Grog, did you try, it's been 20 odd years since you left the Baptist thing. Did you try any other woo-woo stuff? Was there a yoga phase in your...
That's a good question. Well, You know, I was very lucky. I came from a long line of alcoholics, and alcohol never did much for me,
Praise God.
Yeah.
which I attribute to pure chance, genetically, just pure luck. So did some partying, and I tried, you know, some heavier drugs, and I did, you know, stuff like that. But I was running a company, and then I met my wife, and you know, and then just things kind of happen. I mean, when you're raising a family, you're working, you're busy as hell, so you don't really have a lot of time to think about this stuff. Now I'm retired, and my kids are grown up, so you know, that's why I'm reading Tom Holland. I'm trying to do it with an open mind. I'm only like the second chapter in, but I can tell you, Richard Carrier, I just saw a live stream with him on Myth Vision podcast, and he said Tom Holland's full of shit. That's all. He's just full of shit. That's, you know, so but I want to maintain an open mind about it. But I'm going to check what Tom Holland says. If Tom Holland says XYZ, I'm going to check XYZ. Okay? I'm not taking it on faith because it makes me feel good, or wow, see, I'm a Christian. I'm a good person because Tom Holland said Christians are responsible for everything. Good.
I win.
See,
I win.
I'm not going to buy. I've had that bullshit told me many times. When I check it out, it turns out to be bullshit. So I'm going to fact check everything he says.
So,
and I'll fact check atheists too, by the way. I don't just fact check Christians.
so can I ask?
People lie all the time. You got to be very careful. So, yeah.
I just want to ask a question and this isn't like a.
I hope I answered your question. And by the way, thank you for your questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you did. Thank you for answering them.
I do. You guys are very nice people. I thank God for that. So, not the typical Christians, unfortunately. I mean, fortunately.
So this isn't a gotcha question. I hate gotcha questions. They're like veiled.
I don't care. I'll take gotcha questions.
I don't like them, so I'm just telling you up front that this
fine.
isn't intended that way. So, when you say you want to fact check things and not take things on faith, like essentially to me that seems like an infinite regress, because at some point, like, you fact check someone with what someone else has said, and then like with what someone else has said, eventually, like, who do you trust?
Well, that is a problem. And we're all stuck using our own reason and logic. This is like morality. They say, well, what about that authority? What about that certain infinite regress of authorities?
Yes.
Well, unfortunately, we're stuck here as humans, and we have to make decisions.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to go with your own intuitions. I do that in quotes because that's a big thing. Intuitions, reason, and logic. Okay. And you're stuck. Okay. So yeah, you're right. That's a big problem. Under determination and, infinite regress and all that. That was,
Yeah.
But you're stuck. You have to live in the world. You have to make decisions. You have to decide whether you pay 10% of your gross income to a church that claims it's the only true church.
Right.
Things like that. So yeah, you're stuck. Okay. Well, that's it. That's how I look at it. I mean, I used to worry about stuff like that. And then I said, well, everybody's got to kind of call it like they see it. Right.
Everybody's got to do that.
Why would you marry that girl? But people told me, you're nuts marrying your wife. You're insane. This woman's a lawyer. She's a good lawyer. She's going to clean your ass out. So I'm stuck. I got to use my reason, my intuition. And fortunately, I lucked out. But you got to make your own decision. You're stuck. Existentially stuck.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's a great answer. Thank you. Sam, here he is, the famous biblical Unitarian himself.
I'm Luke's tongues interpreter.
They called you a monster earlier, Sam.
Who called me a monster?
I did.
What context?
One did. We all agreed.
What sort of monster is that?
Well, I was just saying, like, you weren't like a super OG randos, but everybody thinks of you as like an OG rando.
No,
But
I
that's
was
just
like
because
the
you're such a
last of the
beast.
OG randos.
Well,
I snuck in the door right before the OG door closed.
I don't know where the cutoff was.
It was when it got much harder to get on Paul's calendar.
Oh, okay.
That's like when you couldn't just click on the Calendly link and find something anytime you wanted. That's
So T Grog, this is a perfect example. Sam and I are really good friends. We talk all the time offline. We have each other's phone numbers. But I've learned more about the specific doctrines of the Trinity, having been a Christian my whole life, in talking to someone who does not self-identify as a Trinitarian.
We're not allowed to use the phrase self-identify, Luke. Didn't you see that in the comments section the other day?
That's funny, self-identify.
Because Jordan Hall was
all the time.
self-identifying as a Christian, and people were upset about a positive use of the phrase self-identifying. So we can't help but be just who we are and what comes out of us.
Some words are poisoned. Like, why are they poisoned?
Because that's what always happens with words.
It's not fair.
So anyhow, like this is why I love this whole arena of people where you're not harvesting the fringes and excluding people based on whatever label they want to put on themselves, because then you actually learn from people. You're not in the echo chambers where everybody's just saying the right things, you know, where like people are like, you're no longer a Christian because you deny whatever. Pick your poison.
I get told that plenty of times. It's not
right.
that they don't tell me that, or it's not that certain people don't wish I was excluded. It's that this is the corner where it's not possible to really exclude people. The only person who can exclude you is yourself, or if you do something incredibly stupid and burn too many bridges. But no one has the central authority to exclude anyone, really.
See? And this is Paul. Look, Paul loves to troll me. Luke is very concerned about these rules because I'm like, he'll say I'm anti-propositional, but I'm anti-propositionalism. There's a great verse in the Bible, 1 Timothy 1:23. The law is just if you use it lawfully. It's about action. It's about being in the world. There's law and there's a spirit. You can use the law unlawfully. You can use rules to exclude.
And we're concerned about the rules, Paul, because both Luke and I have been burned by rules enough times to know what the dark side of these rules are. I'll even say part of the reason why the Chicago Bridges of Meaning, Estuary, Jordan Peterson, whatever we call ourselves group is not in the Estuary network is because I'm still distrustful of anything that has rules or anything that could ever turn on me.
Yeah.
And it's not like I think John Van Donk is about to excommunicate me, because John Van Donk is perfectly excommunicatable for his own beliefs. But
aren't we all?
Aren't we all? But how long before someone else is in charge and they're like, wait a minute, you have Sam in here? No way.
And this is where, like, you said this, I think, T. Grog in a comment the other day, is like a lot of the atrocities of the modern Western world have to do with religion and Christianity. I completely agree because of this very dynamic. And I think a lot of, like, Peugeot was talking about this the other day, because when Christ came in, Antichrist came in. Counterfeit, mammon, that which professes to be Christ, but instead of uniting, actually divides, but calls itself Christ. That's what Antichrist is.
Well, it depends on what you're reading, right? Since it's only used 3 times in the Bible, it's a matter of some controversy, right?
Antichrist?
Yeah.
It's 1 John 2 primarily, right?
And here's a little beef I have too. I notice that this is the apologetic space I come from. Apologists are world experts on every possible subject. They're world experts on cosmology, psychology, physiology, brain science. They're world experts. What qualifies Jonathan to be an expert on anything except art? You make these grand pronouncements. Well, it's the Antichrist and it's this and it's, well, he's not a biblical scholar. He's some artist that pontificates about stuff like this. And it's like, I don't go to my plumber for brain surgery tips. Okay. People have certain areas of expertise, and that's what their expertise is in, not whatever. I'll just
What?
declare myself an expert. I'm an expert on everything. I'm a life coach.
What if there's an antichrist in me? Like maybe I'm working on the antichrist that is in me.
So this idea that people can just, like, I don't know if you've seen this. I saw this on Paul's channel. I raised hell about it. Jordan Peterson has this thing about Exodus. There's no biblical scholars in the whole group. And they're sitting there pontificating about Exodus and what it really means. It really means this. See,
listen,
I'm going, these people are just bullshitting. They're just like spouting off. Well, yeah, it means this. It's like,
it's just remember that was a celebrity Bible study that was filmed for the public. That's what that was. And I wish I was part of that Bible study. It sounded like one of the most interesting Bible studies that I never got to be a part of. And I think that this little corner is pretty anti-credentialist, but that doesn't mean that anything you say goes. You have to earn your credibility by being interesting and by having other people punch at you or poke at you in the comment section and see how you stand up to that.
Holy cow, Jacob Federecci likes you. So you're getting love from one of the most disagreeable people in the corner.
Jacob, he's beating one of Jacob's drums about subject matter experts and how you can, like, you need to be able to distribute your cognition. Jacob loves credentials.
Well,
he's not.
I don't feel qualified to talk about a lot of topics. I think I'm a fairly smart individual. Maybe the Dunning-Kruger's kicked in with me, but I don't sit there and pontificate about cosmology, quantum mechanics, and all this shit. It's like, are you kidding me? You got to really know. You got to go through years of study to understand this shit. You can't just, I read a book on it by, Deepak Chopra, and now I'm an expert on quantum. It's stupid. It's absurd.
I read the Book of Five Rings, Miyamoto Musashi, best swordsman in Japan, and then he studied calligraphy to become a better swordsman. And so there's some things where even though you're a carver, that can help you become a better husband, right? It's like, so you have to be careful with that too.
I agree. I totally agree with that because you learn learning how to play the piano can make you a better student, or there's a spread. Yeah.
The institutions that credential, even look at what's happening to Peterson right now with his credentialing. Like, does it have anything to do with his ability to be how good he was as a clinical psychologist?
No.
Or his research, or his influence. But he's done lab. He's created products and done lab work and stuff. So like.
I would say this. Yeah. Yeah, I would say.
I think that's
Hi, Paul.
That's the question.
I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
I've been praying for this moment. Here we are.
Well, obviously Yahweh has answered your prayers. That means it's true, right?
Oh, you have no idea.
The only way this will be better is if we close in a prayer where you accept the Lord Jesus Christ as your personal Savior.
I've got the guitar.
Lord and Savior.
I'm waiting for an appearance like the Apostle Paul. I'm waiting.
Get the music going, Christian. We need that strumming in the background.
Psychotechnologize him. Psychotechnologize his brain.
Unfortunately, Paul comes in and I have to. No, I'm not running away, Paul. I do have to work out in 15 minutes. So I do have to go. I'm an old man and I have to work out. So,
all right, Paul, you've got 15 minutes to close this thing.
I could probably leave. I could probably give you 5 more minutes because I have to drive over there, of course. So.
Yeah, PBK, is this about making Christian?
Which is, it's expertism. It just is. It's going away, and it doesn't mean that there isn't a point, that there aren't degrees of technical knowledge, but none of us. It's exactly the same dilemma that you talked about before in terms of the Luke. No. This isn't all about you, Luke.
I'm trying.
Yes,
Paul.
it is. Yes, it is.
Doesn't work.
Oh, Jacob's going to be so unhappy with you and your StreamYards. Oh no, that's even worse.
Okay. Well, listen, Jacob told me to do it, and I'm trying to listen to
No,
Jacob.
don't listen to Jacob. There's your first mistake. No, but it's the same as the infinite regress. You can't know enough. And so, it's like when you have a medical problem, go ask your physician. Now, on one hand, that's the best place to start. On the other hand, he's still a physician. And so we all have this sort of 80-20 rule about experts where we, you should look at expertise about 80% of the time, but make sure you got 20% that's sort of wondering about your local doctor. Take me off this thing, Luke. I don't want to be on the big screen. I got enough of me on the internet. I don't need
old men don't look good close up.
That's actually
exactly.
That's a good.
So, T-Grog, we got to have you in for a Randos conversation. I'm so glad you came in. This is awesome.
I'm retired. I got to do something.
I got a question.
Send me an email.
Can this little corner get bigger than a Dunbar number in terms of the number of people who are
What's a Dunbar number?
The Dunbar number is sort of like chimpanzee troops tend to have about 200-ish, chimpanzees, and you can remember that many faces and sort of keep a mental history of their personality and all the nice things they've done for you and all the bad things they've done for you, right? It's like a credentialing system in your mind, but it only seems to be able to handle a certain number. You can't do this with 10,000 things, maybe a few hundred at most. And so I feel like we're dodging the credentialing system because we're below a Dunbar number in this little corner. And obviously there are a lot of lurkers who know the Dunbar people, but who aren't in the Dunbar circle themselves. But I think that's part of the nature of our group.
Yes. And what we are doing with YouTube and these conversations is playing with that Dunbar number. And the key thing, the key takeaway this morning is we all wanted to talk to T-Grog because he's been visible in the comments section and we wanted to see more of him. That's the key takeaway this morning. And
because of his expertise.
He talks about personal. This is what we're doing. We're playing with this Dunbar number.
Well, I'm feeling very loved. That's fantastic.
Oh, don't worry. There's some people going to comment on this about PVK and his vicious love bombing people. That's so wrong and grifty.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I can go to the Mormon church. They'll do the same thing.
Exactly.
So, exactly.
It's a tactic to get you to convert.
Yeah, the best thing about us is that we're not
must mean
under the
Mormonism's
banner
true, right?
of heaven.
It's true in a vertical sense. See.
But we are playing with that because we do, and because the Dunbar number is extremely stressed right now because of social media. And so what we're trying to do is figure out different ways to tribe.
Oh,
And
is that the
Campfires.
one way?
Is that
Campfires.
the Garth Brooks song, "A New Way to Tribe"? A new way to tribe. Sorry. There are no experts here, guys. Just so you know, nobody's ever claimed to be one. That's the only 2 cents I wanted to put in. Like I would say, I think that Luke is an expert on personalism, but he would never claim to be an expert on such a thing. And if he did, I would be like, "You're not a fucking expert." But that was my whole beef. I'm really sorry. I'm really glad to hear from you, T-Grog. It was a fascinating discussion, guys. Really good. And Tim, what's up, Tim? Holla. I
do have to run, guys. And Paul, I don't hate you. I think your ideas are unclear and I don't understand them.
Randos.
That's all.
That's not Paul's job. Paul isn't the have the ideas person. He is the landscaper or the Salience landscaper director of everybody. It's not Paul's job to invent the propositions.
Or a catalyst. He's not that kind of leader. Everybody wants.
Well, we're going to talk about the Heidelberg Confession at some point. So
Catechism. I'm the expert. It's Heidelberg Catechism.
Thank you.
Have a good workout.
Enjoy your workout, T-Grog. Thanks.
Gotta go. Gotta go.
All right.
Bye.
Approaches are that's where the alignment is between Graham and I.
Okay, so what is bringing down the fourth wall project, Graham?
A terrible spell. And part of that spell, the humans have the campfire circuitry. For whatever reason, probably because it. So, like, the television engages that, and like that's when your tribal elders are passing on information and stuff. So like those things are hijacked and make everybody feel like their audience. And like if you watch characters in series that do break the fourth wall, and that's what the fourth wall I'm referencing when I do it. It's the wall that behind which you are audience and not a human. So
Okay.
Hashtag paintball for Jesus, @GrimGrizz, hashtag break the fourth wall.
So like you do like break the fourth wall that doesn't exist and be like,
break the fourth wall a little bit.
you really helped me break the fourth wall. That like, you know, it's just people.
Good poetry is definitely it's definitely always trying to break the fourth wall.
Always tried, as GrimGrizz says, to break the fourth wall to the degree that I can.